social scientist.
I think people get discouraged. We have a culture that promises you everything fast.
Professor of Integrated Science and Technology.
When you're learning how to be with yourself, it's scary. You might not be good at it, but then you start getting better at it.
Eric Pappas.
I believe that all change starts with individual change.
This is The Last Lap.
We don't change society from the outside in. We change it. We change ourselves.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the second episode of The Last Lap. I'm Mia Brabham, and this is a 10-episode podcast where I interview my favorite, most interesting professors, mentors, and just really cool people during the last 10 days of my undergrad career here at James Madison University. These are all the questions I've ever wanted to ask them about their stories, the life lessons they've learned, their areas of study, and there's something new to learn in every episode for everybody out there listening. Today, I'm here with Dr. Eric Pappas, Professor of Integrated Science and Technology, chatting about life things at the Artful Dodger Cafe. Chris Bonacore and the Jenna K. Stone, fellow students and friends who've also taken individual sustainability, are here to talk with us today. Welcome, and let's start the show. Okay, so I love, you know what's funny actually? The podcast before this, I was interviewing Dr. Flamiano, and I was like, you'll never guess who I'm sitting down with tonight. And she was like, no way. And I was like, you connector, you. So tech or JMU? Answer honestly. There is a right answer.
Both were appropriate for their times.
Okay. Oh, that was good.
Very political. Yeah. At Tech, I taught literature for about 8 years, and then I taught engineering design.
Oh, sweet. What made you switch?
Came here. And why?
Yeah.
Because it was an interesting change.
Yeah.
And of course they were going to triple my salary too, and I had raising 2 kids on my own.
Do you have an engineering background?
No, but I have a design background. I was an artist before I went back to school.
That's awesome.
So I designed and made furniture for a number of years. And some other things, but that was the design part. And I came here and I taught cognitive psych first and now social psych, which I like more than anything.
So, before being a professor, you were a musician, right? And you were on the road.
Yes.
That's awesome. Can you talk about that?
I had a reasonable fantasy, a Woody Guthrie fantasy. People don't remember who he is. But anyway, I started playing. I was in upstate New York first, and then I moved to Floyd County, Virginia. And I was with my son Jesse, he was 2. And I started thinking, wow, maybe I could actually write some songs, and I started writing some songs, and I started playing at the coffee house at Virginia Tech, and then I thought, well, maybe I could play other places, and then I did Roanoke, and then it sort of morphed over a year or two into doing everything from coffee houses to concerts, full-blown concerts, demonstrations, fundraising stuff, and Jesse and I took to the road for about 5 years, hitchhiked probably around 100,000 miles from concert to concert and stuff. And one thing nice about it was hitchhiking with a guitar case and a 3-year-old is like having a ticket. Everybody stops. It's like, right. So we did that, and I came off the road because I wanted to start graduate school, and Jesse needed to actually be in school, which would be nice. He was about 7. So, and I did some TV, some radio, recorded some records.
Oh my gosh.
And had a fine time of it. So,
your name should have been, your musician name should have been Big Pappas. Like, Papa. Yep. So your hands, should I stop? Okay. I got you.
Well, if I revive my career, I will ask you to help me out and represent me.
PR? I love it.
Yeah. Well, my manager wasn't very good, so he couldn't do much worse than him.
Oh man.
So.
And then you also, another interesting experience, you were in the woods. You lived there. For how long?
10 years.
Straight.
So when I finished college in 1972, I'd been very active in the anti-war and civil rights movement and the women's movement that was getting going. So I stayed an extra year in the city to work full-time at it, and like a lot of people at the time, we became very disillusioned with the anti-war movement was coming apart, the civil rights movement was experiencing some problems, Nixon was president. So this was at the beginning of the Back to the Land movement. So I moved with my partner Brenda, upstate New York, lived on a commune for a few years, and then we moved not far from the commune for another couple of years, so very deep in the forest, and then that's when Jesse was born. So we were there, I don't know, 6 or 7 months a year. We were on the road the rest of the time, and it was scary. It was when we really questioned, did we make the right decision living in a primitive style? And living, you know, the nearest neighbor, one neighbor a mile away, the next neighbor, I don't know, 2 miles maybe? There's nobody else on the top of the mountain except the two of us. So, yeah, it was fun.
You know, what was the one thing that when you came back to the world to work again, what was the one thing that you were like, geez, I wish I was back there? Or what was something you took away from that and brought it in?
I have a good answer for that. I felt like I was a part of something. Living so close to living in the natural world and literally having everything we do dependent upon weather and temperature and the animals in the forest. Everything was so focused on being a part of that and also subject to it. We weren't there to conquer. I think that gave me a great sense of comfort being on the planet, that I actually was part of life on the planet and that maybe I belonged here.
I have a question because so one of my best friends, Kyle Anderson, is in our class with me, and his intentional change project was a return to nature, and he started struggling with it, and he's like, okay, well, we're outside, but this is man-made, and so thinking about, okay, well, if that's what we consider nature, aren't we all part of the world? We're all part of nature, so even being inside of buildings or in a city is like that nature. And then he just started getting in this like philosophical argument with himself, and I just want to know like what your because you talk a lot about going into nature in the natural world, like what is your definition of nature or the natural world?
I guess, at least for living in it, living in a place that is very undisturbed. It was exciting being in places at times where very, very few people had been before, because it was deep in the forest. So there's a connection and at the same time an aloneness to it. You can put those together. I mean, life is about contradiction. So feeling very alone but feeling also very connected in the forest was a great source of security. Great source. But it was a great experience. It was a great experience for Jesse to grow up in the forest and to have the forest as his playground. He didn't have any toys. He had a stick. He said, that's what I had when I had a stick. And I could
Innovative.
go into the...
Cabin fever, is that a real thing?
It is a real thing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it happens in February in places like that. People go crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Really crazy.
I think he's already clear on that.
And winter's not over in upstate New York until like May.
Yeah.
So where we lived, there were 2 seasons. There was winter, and there was the last 2 weeks of July. And the summers were beautiful. The last 2 weeks of July, epic.
I bet.
But that's it.
That's it. Oh my goodness. So fast forward a few years, and then you're a professor, and you have us, and we're in your classes.
But a scary thought, huh?
I know, it's scary, right? So do y'all want to talk a little bit about your experience in the class?
I was just saying earlier how actually this class inspired a dietary change with me. I was worried that I was going to have to go back to eating like a meat diet because that's what doctors have told me all my life. So after sort of experimenting with like sort of being a vegan, I've noticed that a lot of my dietary problems have gone away, my energy levels increased, so that's been a really cool aspect of the class. I've also taken this class in conjunction with another leadership class.
You're in Dr. Warner's class.
I'm also in Dr. Warner's class, so it's been really interesting comparing and contrasting, and I see that there's different means of facilitation. It's like facilitating that thought process within others. Sometimes it takes longer to facilitate certain realizations, but I've also come about the realization that through this class, being more confident with my opinions and being able to share them in a way that I still value inclusive language.
For me, the Fast Change project really hit me hard, and I think it was because of what was going on personally in my life, but some of the questions like, what do you want your life to look like? Which I don't think was necessarily attached to that particular project, but with that project it really came to the front for me. And I almost want to call some of the projects like self-cognitive therapy, because if you're open to express what is going on in your heart, you'll see where the problems are, or you'll see what you need to change. And I just felt like it did that. It really helped to just kind of dig in there. And if you can go as far as you want, no one's forcing you, because it's all self-choice. And for me, I was at a point where I was ready to look at that. And
You were extremely motivated. You were the poster child for that class.
Oh, come on.
Seriously, no, you didn't.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I felt like the methodology was there. It was all there. It was like, well, do you want to make that change? How are you going to go about it? What's stopping you? And things were coming up that I was ready to look at, And I had a situation with a friend who was a girl, and we got close during that period, and I was able to see issues in myself through that.
Oh, the listening project.
Yeah.
I still think about that all the time. So for the listeners, listening project, there's a lot of different projects we do in this class, but basically listening project, you go a few weeks and you do like the first week, you choose 3 people in your life, and you approach them, you start a conversation, but you don't talk. You really listen to this person. You aren't inputting as much, you're not thinking about what you're going to say next, you're just truly present and you're there. And the second week, ask them some questions. You ask them if they're live, and you sort of tie in because the last week you were listening. So
And you still listen.
Yeah.
Put them both together.
You're always listening. And then in the third one, you sort of spark conversation.
Well,
So
you do more of an academic conversation, so it's not casual. Instead of saying, "Oh, hey, how was it this weekend when you went away?" It would be more like starting a conversation that would become a deeper conversation, a philosophical conversation perhaps, or political, but something that's more than casual. Or, hey, I heard, how's your senior project going? What are you researching? How's it going? Where are you going with it?
one of the big projects we talked about it right before the podcast, was Ideal Self. I think we all agreed that project was really cool because you sort of had these spheres of life, so like physical and psychological and intellectual and social, and you sort of delve into who you picture yourself to be and who you want to be as a person, and then the following week you sort of enact that in yourself, so you sort of become the person you want to be, and you start thinking about your decisions, and you're just basically living more intentionally.
Well, you be your ideal self in every situation you're in.
Yeah, you're you.
Which sounds crazy.
But you want to be. Yeah, it's hard. It was very hard, but it makes you think. And more than anything, I think it was like a catalyst of thought. Like, I really started thinking like, wow, legitimately, who do I want to be?
That change was like very challenging, and for me it was just it's not necessarily, I don't want to say it was easy, but I think that I felt very empowered when I was like trying to live with integrity and live by those values, and I think that by me listing them in the beginning of the year and kind of going through and really, because I've like reflected before, but maybe not in a written way. I think when you write things down and you have a better understanding, it's all laid out for you. You say, okay, well, this is how I view myself now. How am I trying to change that? So I think that after writing it down, it just became very clear for me, and I was very motivated, and it wasn't necessarily easy, but it was something that I was really passionate about doing.
That was very helpful, I think, writing down our values, because, I think we think about it in everyday lives. I talk about this sort of with Dr. Warner on his podcast, but how often do we actually like write it out and say, this is actually what I believe, when we reflect on it?
Or think about it even.
Or think about it.
And to live by them as much as you possibly can. So it's hard to lie. You have to remember so much when you lie and you fool people and all that. It's really just too much work. When I started teaching literature at the beginning of my career, all these same topics came up because we were examining characters, and which is like examining individuals. And finding out who they are, how they're acting towards other people, and it's very natural for values and ethics to come up and to get clear with how you treat other people and how you expect to be treated. I mean, everybody wants to be treated really well, but they don't necessarily, think of any politician or corporate head who wants to be treated well, but wants to cheat everybody else.
So, okay, one that was really hard for me, one project was when we had to be on the date with ourselves. I don't know if anybody else struggled with that. I felt really awkward. I felt like people were like staring at me.
Really?
I really did not like it. And I don't know, I just was like, I was trying so hard to like be like, and I thought I was comfortable, and I was like, yeah, I do things by myself all the time. Like going to a store, like I love that. Like even like going, I don't know, like the festival I went by myself, but like sitting and eating, I was like it was like weird. So how often do you take yourself out on a date? And why should people do it?
Well, I've asked myself out on a date, but I got turned down. So, I think people don't spend time by themselves because they don't want to have to deal with themselves. They don't want to spend too much time inside their heads because all your demons come up. And of course they do. And you have to learn how to deal with that if you're going to get anywhere in life. You can't say, well, I don't want to be alone. I want to be distracted all the time because if I'm alone, my demons come up. And of course, who wants to think of that? Well, you have to start working on your demons. And when you start working on them, they don't come up as much anymore. You all have heard that.
Going off of that, one thing that always stands out to me that you said in class was that this is typically a generation of doers and not thinkers. And at first I was like, that's not true. Then I started thinking about it and I was just on the fence about it a little. And I was like, I don't know, maybe we do not reflect as much as we should. But do you all have any comments on that?
Yeah, I was actually the same way in the beginning of this class. I was going to say, like, when exactly what you said with the reflection, I said, I hate being inside my own head. That's awful. Like, I don't want to be there. I get really anxious about a lot of things. I've had, like, anxiety problems in the past. So I didn't want to have to deal with, like, those demons, and being by myself is a time where they, like, usually arise and come up. But then something I really like that you said in this class, like the last class that we just had on Monday, was especially in pertaining to relationships with other people, you have to love yourself before you expect anybody to love you. I think that's so powerful because if you were saying like, okay, yeah, come be with me, love me, but I hate myself, how can you expect somebody else to put in that time and effort if you're not willing to first? I think that that's something that we all need to work on, and going along with the whole doing thing, we think that we can just do and then fix it by adding things like a career or a partner or something, when really I think you have to take the time to reflect and then gain that self-love before you go out and do absolutely anything. Because
it's the same thing. It's not very good advertising when you want someone to love you but you don't love yourself.
Yeah.
Or on the same token, if you don't like being by yourself, you don't like yourself enough to be by yourself, but you want someone else to be with you. Well, I don't like myself enough to hang out with me, but do you want to? I don't know.
Yeah, I was similar in that respect. I got a lot out of being alone, but I tend to spend a lot of time alone, but...
Yeah, that's because you don't have any friends. That's not...
But I like myself. You like me? That's where we hang out. I'll start here. No, you know what it got me thinking about, and it's kind of gravitated into like consumerism. You know, and I don't mean like going out and buying stuff, but just the concept of having a lot. And in the U.S., we have so much. Like, you can go to college, you can borrow money, you know, like, you can go to jail and get out and get a credit card in a couple of months. You know what I mean? Like, you can do just about anything here and still move on. And it's not like that in other parts of the world. And when I meet people who are like missions or like they spend time in some third world countries, when you sit down with them, you really sense there's a calmness about them when they come here. And they always say the same thing. They're always like, there's so much here. And I don't know what it's like to have nothing. You know, I tried doing that for 2 weeks, and it was cool. I was good with it, but there were other things I needed to do at that point. But what blew me away is that we have to get out of our minds. The doing part sometimes comes with the environment. You know, what environment have we created? You know, you can go out, you can date anybody on demand, you can go buy anything, you literally can do just about anything here. And the only thing that really stops you is yourself. So if we can't sit down with ourselves for a minute, all of a sudden this society is like driving, this environment is driving how we're thinking. And that's why I like that project, because it just got you sitting there going, well, I can do anything.
Now
but,
what?
Yeah, but like, well, then your mind starts running like, oh God, wait, well, I can see there's these things that are bothering me, and I need to.
It's mind fuck. In the best way.
And I think a lot of people, when they start to become reflective, it's really scary because you can't control your mind and all the negative stuff comes up. But like anything else, and you've all heard this, you don't jump into the pool for the first time and become an intermediate swimmer. Thinking, reflecting, call it what you want, it's the same way. You learn how to do it, and you do it the same as you learn about swimming and when you almost drown the first few lessons. When you're learning how to be with yourself, it's scary. You might not be good at it, but then you start getting better at it. And for all the years I've been teaching it, I haven't heard anyone who tried that they didn't get used to it.
Do you think being a doer is a bad thing, though?
If you're only a doer, yeah. I think it's nice to be both, but if I had a choice, I would want to be a thinker and do some stuff that... And I'm worried, because we're a nation of doers.
We are.
This is not a reflective, thoughtful nation. We just like doing stuff. And we are, in many ways, a very superficial people. Our culture is very superficial. It's not a surprise. It's not a surprise we have a Republican candidate like we do, who we deserve, probably. We have ruined the country enough that megalomaniac, racist sociopath would run for president and even have a shot at getting in. And we probably deserve him. It's not so. And I know people get upset when I talk about our country that way, but it's more because I love the country, not because I want to bring it down.
What do you mean by superficial? Like, go into detail about that. So, like, how are we superficial as people? What do you think?
We don't think. We just do stuff. We don't think about what we do. We don't think about what our actions are really about, where they come from and how they affect other people. We just say, I want, or I'm doing, and then something happens, and then maybe when it doesn't work out, you come back to yourself and say, oh, maybe that wasn't such a good idea, or I did something, Jen, and I hurt you. Oh, I didn't think about it. Oops.
You know, we don't change anything unless we come from a place of want. And let's say you're alone and it bothers you. You know, you'll want to go hang out with somebody else.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, you can
It's
see
like
it.
immediate
Yeah, and you
reward.
can see it. And I love your analogy about swimming, because I swam a lot as a kid, and Pappas and I have surfed a lot over the years. And there's this term in surfing, a lot of people think, well, I can just surf the summer and get good. And there's an old term out there that says, you don't need quality time, you need more time. And Dr. Pappas' perspective of thinking, it's not like you can say, oh, I'm a thinker now for 10 minutes, and then you go right back to doing. You can't fake this. You can't fake it. You need more time thinking. And you're not gonna get more quality time just saying, oh, I'm thinking 10 minutes out of the day.
And you know what happens? The more you think and the more you get into it, your life improves. And then you don't need the effort anymore, because you start believing this is the way to go.
So what do you suggest people do? People who maybe listen to this and saying, maybe I'm a doer, not a thinker, what should they do to be thinking?
I think it's all about facilitating and developing intrinsic motivation.
Awareness, motivation, intentional self-development. In a nutshell, that's what we're doing. And a lot of what's in the class, I started working on when I was at Tech 15 years ago or so. And the more recent stuff I've developed with my son Jesse, who's a PhD from University of Virginia. And it seems to be working. This seems to be close enough to people's natural inclinations that it's not foreign, and when people do it, many people, not everyone, find it rewarding enough that they would like to keep doing it. And I always think that, so let's say you do the listening project or the fast change project, and it makes your life a little better, why would you stop doing it? But by teaching processes, even if you stopped, let's say, doing the listening project, or you did the project and over the next couple of years you found out you were talking about yourself all the time again, you know the process you can go through again. So knowing processes means you can use it for something else, apply the process to a different project you want to work on yourself, or go through the same thing again if you feel like you've slipped a little bit.
You can do it in steps, like basically. You can do it in small steps. And then when it's broken down, it's like easier to complete because you have those little guidelines for yourself. Then it works slow.
But people want change really fast. As soon as we can envision change, you start to envision yourself as like a workout guy. What you want to be that right away. Like by next week you want to be a full-bore workout guy, and it doesn't work that way. You have to work into it. You have to move slowly, generally speaking, and sort of earn your stripes. But I think people get discouraged. We have a culture that promises you everything fast. You know, lose 30 pounds of ugly fat by tomorrow, and when we can't do that, we get really discouraged, and we start making up excuses as to why we can't do it, like relegating it to the future. Oh, I'll work this summer. I'm going to be really free. I'll work out this summer. By the time summer comes around, you've probably forgotten it. But you don't have to feel guilty for not doing it now.
It's almost like an anxiety complex, you know, where we're so familiar with this environment, with this culture, with this society that we sit and we expect it to be consumeristic, like I want that now. And then when we finally do it in the way that you're suggesting, all of a sudden things change. You know, because we cannot speed up the process. I get that question all the time when I do jobs for people. They want to detox immediately from their health problem. And I sit there and I tell them, if you detox immediately, you could end up in the ER. It took you X amount of time to get sick. It's going to take you X amount of time to get better.
That's really great. So yeah, I guess last question. So it's a lot about, I love what you said in the beginning of the semester. You said we may not be able to change the world, but it all starts with changing ourselves. And then maybe that can like show other people and inspire other people to do the same. And I think that's a lot of what you do in the class and what other people do in the class. Like we all feed off of each other and continuously see other people's lives. So what's the biggest impact you think you made in your own life out of all the choices that you've made?
Being a father.
Yeah.
Being a good father. That's going back to what you just said before. I think that most of the things that I've studied and am teaching, I've tried out on myself first. So even philosophically, I believe that all change starts with individual change. People can come up with caveats to that, I know, but in general, we don't change society from the outside in. We change ourselves because we understand the world first through ourselves and then through society. We don't do intrinsic learning. We study global economics before people know how to spend money. We study the environment before we understand what our yard takes to continue. This seems to be good, and you all are great examples of what we did in class, and thank you for that because you're all stars. And things are good so far, right?
So far, so good. Okay, so we're almost done. Really quick. I call this the speed round. And since you like introspection, this might be really good. They're really cool questions.
So this is all about me.
Yeah, this is all about you.
That's
Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So, number one favorite moment in your undergrad experience.
Carrying. I attended graduation carrying a coffin dressed in black shrouds to, there were 4 of us, 2 coffins, and angry parents. We were carrying coffins to protest Richard Nixon invading Cambodia without Congress's permission. And at graduation during the ceremony. And there were angry parents who, if we had gotten alone with them, they would have killed us. We did have a getaway car because people were angry. But that was one memorable moment. And then they wouldn't give me my diploma because technically I had not attended graduation. And I said, I did attend, and they said, we know.
We know. That's such a great response. We know. Amazing. All right, your favorite moment being here at JMU?
Being in the classroom and having having a group of students who are genuinely interested, and the process, the reciprocal process, where the educational process is working. It's not all me, it's not all you, but where there's some sort of harmony working.
All right, your heart song. So it's not your favorite song. It's you encapsulated, like embodied in a song. It's like you as a song. Your spirit song.
Well, I guess I would have to say it was a song that on my first album that I wrote for Jesse about living in the forest together, called Blue Ridge Mountain Home, and describing our life together in the forest.
Awesome. Your cry song.
My cry song?
Everyone has a cry song.
Another song actually on the same album where...
Yeah,
get ready
on
for this.
iTunes. I like that.
I'm ready for it.
This was, I had to tell Jesse that there was a possibility that his mother was dying. And he was 2 years old, and I didn't really know how to tell him, so I wrote him a song. And it was weeks before I could play the song to him without crying. And no, she didn't die. But that was a good answer, huh?
All right, the moment or a moment in your life you felt most alive.
Today, things really just keep getting better.
That's good, Kevin.
I wasn't expecting that.
He wasn't ready.
Just to let the listeners.
If you weren't a professor at JMU, what would you be?
I would probably be on the road singing still.
If you could win an award for anything, what would you want to win?
I don't go for awards.
Well, if you could choose any award, though. Anyone.
Choose any
Ever.
award.
Ever.
Like
of all time.
best father.
Just like a personality, yeah, like a characteristic.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa, what? That's the word.
Gotcha.
Okay, well, if you were to not win an award, who would you thank in your acceptance speech?
I would probably, I know this sounds so cliche. I would probably thank my dad first. My role model, my father, who let me at 12 years old start hitchhiking, and at 13 years old start hitchhiking long distance. I had an older friend with me though. He was 4 months older than me. He was 14. So my dad was thrilled with the fact that his son was vagabonding around upstate New York at 13 for days at a time. Horrified my mother. But so. Yes.
Amazing. Okay, and the last question of the evening.
How did I get to be so cool? Is that it?
Oh my gosh.
That's not the question?
That's the bonus. Go for it. You want to answer it?
It's so flat.
Ding, ding, ding.
That's what she has with
All right, final question. Give one piece of advice to every college student going out into the world in only one word. Don't try to cheat this. And don't pass.
You would assume I would try to cheat this?
Maybe. And don't pass. Pass is a form of cheating. No more passes. You get one.
Can I use
What if
two
that's
words?
his word? You know
No,
what?
you can't. You see, he just tried to do it. You get one word.
One word's
only.
hard. That's hard.
Okay, that's the point.
Okay.
One word only.
I got it.
Okay.
Reflect.
Boom. Drop the mic. Bye. I'm kidding. Thank you, Dr. Pappas, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Jenna, Chris, thank you for coming. Thank you, Arpo Dodger, for having us, and thank you all so much for listening. I hope you learned something new today, or at least got a little bit of food for thought. Subscribe for more podcasts and for other stories and video content. If you're listening on a YouTube or Facebook, leave a comment to answer one of the takeaway questions in the description. They're really good this week. Respond to any of the topics we talked about today, or even start your own. I promise to read all of them, and I love reading them. Finally, find me on Twitter and Instagram at yourstrulymia_, and let's be friends. Tune into next episode for a wonderful time with Dr. Flamiano on all things leadership and media. Thanks again for listening, and remember, the best learning happens inside and outside the classroom. This is The Last Lap, and until next episode, gotta run. The Last Lap is produced and edited by Mia Brabham, music by Brian Kim.